Hello and welcome to FDT-TV. My name is Mike and I am a very annoyed Arsenal fan, and I'm joined by as always, by the very lovely Mr. Ian Barker, who has recently become a dad, but I'm actually quite surprised he's looking fairly chipper, considering he is a new dad. How are things, me old Chumley? How are you?
Good, all good. I didn't get to watch much football this weekend, but all good apart from that. So we're not getting relegated, even though we lost. Can't complain, mate. Can't complain.
Swings around. To be honest, mate, I wish I had that much joy this week because, it's been very deflating over the last few weeks. There was still obviously the opportunity for us to take City right to the wire, but in a season where you've got possibly one of the best Manchester City squads. I know the scores from previous seasons don't depict that, but certainly from one of the best squads, it was inevitable that they were going to go on their unbelievable run. And sure enough, they now only need 3 points to win the goddamn league. And that's 3 points in the last 3 games. So yeah, not very happy after the abysmal performance that was Arsenal Football Club at the weekend to Brighton. But no doubt we'll come on to that a little bit later. So Ian, I've obviously just mentioned that Manchester City have got 3 points in order to guarantee themselves a title. For a third season in a row. I can't remember if that has been done or no, it's never been done, has it? 3 in a row. Or has it been done?
I don't know.
Okay.
If it has been, it would have been by Manchester United, I'd imagine.
They're the only ones I can think. But obviously, they're still in the shout for a treble as well. They managed to keep Real Madrid at bay. Obviously, a 1-1 draw in the Champions League last week as well. And obviously, come up against their hometown rivals, Manchester United, in the FA Cup. First question to you. Do you see them slipping up in the league at all?
I don't know who they've got left, but no, I don't see them dropping it now.
Okay.
The Manchester City machine is starting to roll as it did last season. It's taken a little while to get rid of some of that inertia, but they're scoring for fun at the minute.
It's very disheartening. I know we've got 2 games left. I think we've got Nottingham Forest and Wolves, I want to say, left. I think Wolves is the last game of the season for us. But I think for the form that Brighton have been on recently, you would have liked to think, and the way we've been playing at home this season, you think we would have put up more of a fight on that. But I think that's all but concluded our season. And I know it seems very bitter of me, considering we spent 93% of the season at the top of the Premier League. And then they're just those 3 stupid results. Obviously, we can take into account the 2 points that were robbed of us by VAR, but I still don't think that would have made any difference whatsoever. Obviously, there's no guarantees that Manchester City are going to win their last 3 games. It's highly unlikely that they will drop any points at this stage, but not impossible. They could have massive off days, obviously, depending how they go on in the Champions League, and also one eye on the FA Cup as well. But it does look all but concluded, so we could actually see them crowned as champions as early as this weekend, I believe. And
I think the pivotal point for you is that there are a lot of teams that are getting drummings this year. Southampton being one of those. They've really, really struggled, yet you couldn't beat them. And I think that was the point where you go, hang on, this is all going to go very bad now. When you're sitting top of the table and you can't beat bottom of the table. I know football's football, and anyone can beat anyone on any given day, but you've played phenomenally, and as I've said a number of times this season, you've put in champions performances. You've not been able to sustain that over a whole season, and there are some performances still which are very prevalent of being a young, inexperienced team. So good and bad in that. One, obviously the team will grow, will have now had that experience, so should learn from it. If they're being managed properly and mentored properly, which you'd have to say progression being progression that you've shown over the last few seasons, they are learning. But also the fact that you've got some real world quality players in your team. You shouldn't be being drawing to Southampton. You shouldn't have had to come from behind in that game. That I think that was one of those that you thought, well, we'll win that, breeze it, no problem. And that's never a good mentality to have.
I think there's been 2 or 3 games this year where we've been kind of caught on the back foot very quickly in the game. That was one of them. I can't remember who the other one was. I think it was Bournemouth as well. Scored a very quick goal against us, and it kind of catches us a little bit unawares. I think one of the things that has definitely been highlighted to me is the lack of squad depth for us. And I've said it all along, is that I still think we're a couple of players away from mounting a successful title challenge. I mean, I suppose you could say this year has been a successful challenge, obviously given the length of time that we have been on top. And again, I don't want to use this as an excuse, but injuries have been... injuries to crucial people at the wrong times have kind of bitten us in the arse a little bit. And I suppose it's always going to be that little niggle in the back of the mind. If Saliba didn't get injured, would we still be in the position that we are in? Because obviously we've had to deal with a makeshift. I say a makeshift. Again, it sounds like an excuse, but obviously we've had Tomiyasu injured. We've had Rob Holding have to cover. We've had Kivois, who's inexperienced within the Premier League. But yes, it is frustrating. I mean, and I want to go back to something I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about the whole that we've bottled it, and yeah. I still am a little bit sour grapes about this, because obviously I get it. We were in such a good position. We're 8 points clear at the top of the league, but everyone, even at that point, people were still saying it's Southampton's. It's Manchester City's title to win.
Yeah.
No one thought we were going to sustain that. So, is it that we've bottled it? I still, yeah, okay, yeah.
So the way I look at it from a neutral perspective is you were in such a commanding position. You were 6 points clear for a lot of it. I know City had a couple of games in hand, so you go, well, are you really 6 points clear? It's a mentality thing. But as I said, the result that I think was to start of the bottling it was that draw at Southampton. You can't win a Premier League and lose to bottom of the table. I don't know. It probably has happened, but I can't recall any Premier League winning side that has won the league and lost to bottom of the table. It's just it's one of those that I think maybe the players may have got ahead of themselves. We're going to win the Premier League. What's that going to mean? Bigger contract? Do I move? Do I get this? Do I get that? And sort of went with the hype instead of. I know Mikel Arteta is very much a fan of that. We only concentrate on the next game, but I don't think when all the media is saying how far you are in front, how much you've got an advantage, it's always yours to lose, and. It's a difficult one because Manchester City hasn't played as well as what they have done the last few seasons. You have to say if they'd been playing in the way they had done last year or the year before that, then no point would you have been ahead. It's just that case of you've bottled some real key games that should have been easy wins. And you've drawn some key games that you should have got wins in. I know with some of them you've ground out results from being behind, but it's. I think you're right in saying if Saliba hadn't got injured, you probably would have been in a better position. But it's a team game. You've got to have that. if the reliance was on that one player and going, well, actually our backups are really shit, then you had the summer window and the January window to try and strengthen that. And I don't think you did particularly go out to go, right, we need a decent backup. You got Jorginho, which I thought was a brilliant move to try and steady the ship, which it did do for some of the games. But I think just from being so far ahead and then now being how far are you behind?
4 points.
So essentially, it's a 10 points away. That's a huge amount of points to be in front and then go behind, and it could be worse by the end of the season. I think if you go and win your next 2 games and Manchester City have a slip up, that's all you can do. That gap might close a little bit, be a bit more respectable. But I think if they go and blow away the next 2 teams and you lose one or draw one, win one, then that gap gets even bigger. And you go, well, from 6 points ahead to 8 points behind. It's a bit hard to argue that you haven't bottled it. I know it's a sore subject and it's hard to swallow, because I could see it in the season. At the beginning of the season, you was a bit pessimistic, still going top four. That's what we want. We want to build on last season. And very slowly but surely, I know you say until it's mathematically impossible, but you could see that joy, that we're going to feel that champions feeling again. You could see it building, and understandably, you was rocking the Premier League at point, or for 93%, as you said. That's a fucking huge percentage. And then all of a sudden, for it to be whipped away, like those tablecloth things where people whip the table. Well, essentially, Mikel Arteta has done that, but he's taken all the knives and forks and glasses with it. He's not quite. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's how I feel at the moment. That there was, I've said this so many times over the last couple of weeks, it's the hope that kills you. And I was always trying to be level-headed, but you can't help but get excited in the whole thing. But you mentioned the South... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, had you been second the whole season, and in this position where you're constantly chasing, would you be disappointed? Would you go, actually, we're up against someone who's broken the Premier League goal scoring record, along with all these other humongous players that are dominating and have been for a number of years? Would you have been disappointed with that result, or would you gone, actually, from building on what we did last year, that was phenomenal, we can now go on build on that next year? I think if it had been that way round, it wouldn't have been so bad.
Yeah.
Or even if Manchester games had been played where they were meant to have, had things not been moved around so much, then it would have almost been like that. It would have been neck and neck. There would have been a point in it at a lot of the season. It would have been a lot of chopping and changing each week on goal difference, certainly early on. So I think it's a slightly skewed view of it, which is why I think you're so disappointed. But again, you've got to finish strong. You've got to finish. You're only as good as your last game, and your last game was absolute dog shit. So you can't finish a season like that. No. Having had so many highs, you've got to push on and try and get something out of the rest of the season.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that is my worry now. Now knowing, as I said, that if we lose our next game and City win, then the season's done. And there's almost kind of like this invisible pressure there's now, or I feel that has been on us for the last couple of weeks, obviously since City have been above us.
Yeah.
And as much as Arteta has come out and said, no, as you said, we take it game by game, we can only focus on what we do, blah, 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 blah. There has to be subconsciously a point where it does start affecting you. It's like, oh shit, if I make a fuck up, then that's it. And sure enough, we're seeing those fuck ups. Obviously, the game against Brighton yesterday was okay for the first half, but we've seen it a couple of times. Obviously, the game against Newcastle at the start of the season, Everton, when just after they appointed Sean Dyche, that if teams come at us, we struggle it. West Ham, the West Ham game in the second half of the season a couple of weeks ago, Now, for me, that was the turning point. I think going away to Anfield and getting a 2-2 draw at Anfield, there's no shame in that.
Yep.
The disappointing thing about that result was the fact that we were 2 goals up, and then obviously Liverpool clawed it back with virtually the last kick of the game. Obviously, we then went to West Ham, or was it our place? Well, we played West Ham again. You started off really strongly, and I messaged the group chat that we were in saying, look, West Ham has started quite strongly there, and then we got 2 relatively quick goals, and I was like, oh, okay, we're on for a bit of a cricket score here.
10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And then then we concede the stupid penalty for Gabriel, and conceded the stupid penalty, and in the second half, just practically gifted Jarrod Bowen the chance, and it's not as if that was his only chance. He was knocking on the door a couple of times, so but we didn't deal with it. So I'd say personally that was a massive kick in the nuts in terms of our season. So the drop into 2 points there, obviously then further compounded by the result against Southampton. So it's, you're right. If we'd been second for the majority of the season, I don't think there would be many Arsenal fans that would be too disappointed with finishing second behind possibly one of the best Manchester City squads. But yeah. So from the top of the, sorry, have you got anything else you want to say on that?
The only thing I do want to ask your opinion on it. Just one, because it makes me feel good to watch other people suffer. Feel my pain. But you've only had a few opportunities in the last decade to win a Premier League title. And how does it feel to have thrown it away again on in a season that you had the best opportunity? Last opportunities when Leicester won. And all the big teams, City, Chelsea, United, Liverpool, were all struggling. And again, we said, oh, you ain't going to see that for another 50 years. We've seen it again only maybe, 6-7 years later. And they're struggling again. How does that feel to know that actually in a 2-horse race, you were the number 2 horse again when you should have been... You could have been number 1, given that it was your own doings that was your downfall.
It's gutting. It really is gutting. There's no way of sugarcoating it. It's like I said. It's the hope that has killed all Arsenal fans. And I've taken to social media throughout various parts of the season, and you start to see some of the diehard Arteta outs from previous years. What the hell is he still doing at our club? Actually start turning around and saying, okay, I was wrong. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's his fault that we are in this position. There's been some poor individual performances over the last few weeks that has caused us individual errors to be where we are. So, yes, it is immensely frustrating, but at the same time, I think we've got such a good foundation now. Obviously, we've seen the improvement from this year to last year. Regardless of how other teams are performing, you can't deny that some of the football that we have been playing this year has been absolutely fantastic. And now I get that obviously teams may be stronger next year, but when you look at the start of the season, you wouldn't have predicted that Liverpool would have done as poorly as they've done. You definitely wouldn't have picked Chelsea.
I don't know. Liverpool, I did predict.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Generally speaking, I would say a lot of people wouldn't have predicted that Liverpool would be where they are, where Chelsea would be where they are, where Tottenham would have been where they are. Tottenham were coming out of the start of the season saying that they were going to challenge for the top of the league with Antonio Conte, and look where they are now. It looks like they're going to miss out on the top 4. So yeah, I think the next year, yes, there will be improvements from some of the teams around us, without a shadow of a doubt. But just because some people make some improvements to the team, as in squad-wise, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get better. We look at the state that Chelsea are in, the number of recruitments that they've had in this season. Granted, there's been a bit of instability at the club for changing managers, etc. But just because you make recruitments into the team doesn't mean that your team are going to perform. Whereas I think that, again, looking back on the last 3 years, certainly since Arteta's been in charge, you have seen a dramatic improvement to where we've come from to where we are now. Looking at the fan base, how the club's being run, there's so many positive things with where we are going. I think, dare I say it, that we will challenge again next year.
I think you definitely be in the hat for top 4, but I think next year is going to be a whole different cat. I think Newcastle will struggle next year, given the extra fixtures. Obviously, you're going to have extra fixtures as well, which is something to think about. But I think Liverpool will be there or thereabouts again. Manchester United, I think, will only get better. Chelsea will inevitably come back. They have spent a lot of money. It looks like they're bringing in Pochettino, which I don't think they're ever going to win a title with him, but they're not going to be languishing down in 11th. They're going to be challenging top 5, top 6. Again, Tottenham, I think are done. They've won nothing. They're going to be in the Conference League by the looks of it, possibly not even that. And it's a case of they're trying to sign players without a manager, so they just seem clueless. They've got the highest season ticket prices in Europe. So I think there will be a revolt there. So that will become sort of the next toxic place to go. And I'm sure they will probably sell that at some point in the next 2 or 3 years because of that. But I think you're going to... I think this year was your best year to mount a challenge. Because, again, I don't see City getting worse.
No.
It's a hard one. It is a hard one. Again, some of the teams, I think Brighton will drop off next year. Can they keep De Zerbi? Obviously, their big players look like they're possibly going to move on, so that will be a struggle. It's a strange season for you. But yeah, next season I think you'll be in a top 4 fight definitely. Will a title challenge be too much? I think that is very much dependent on how other teams can improve, and I think you're right. Just throwing money at it doesn't always work. But I think the cohesion side of things, Manchester United at points look unbeatable. At others, you think a Sunday League team could beat them, and I think that's the same with Chelsea. They've played some football for 60 odd minutes a match that look, you go, this is a title winning side. They're just struggling to put it in the net, and then all of a sudden they fall to pieces. I think those players finding out each other, because the amount of them that have come in, that will only get better. They're not bad players that they've bought. They've all used to playing different systems under different people. You think some of them started under Thomas Tuchel this season. They then went to Graham Potter, who at Brighton played really good football but struggled to find a net. And now they're under Frank Lampard, potentially under Pochettino for the last game of the season. That's 4 managers in a season. That's unheard of at Chelsea. I know they like sacking a manager, but four managers in a season potentially, that's ridiculous. But yeah, I think you will be up there. I think it's it also depends though on how you strengthen.
Yeah.
Will they throw money at it a little bit? I know you want Declan Rice. If you come in for Declan Rice and you spend 70 million quid on him, is that your transfer kitty gone? Unless you sell loads of players,
I think
is he going to improve your team that much that you're going to again be able to topple City?
There's certainly areas which I've certainly highlighted throughout the course of the year. And there's obviously rumours. There's always going to be rumours about players that want to come in, players that want to come out, which no doubt will obviously focus on towards the end of the season, obviously going into the summer transfer window. But yeah, I still think we are a few players short, and obviously being in the Champions League now makes us a lot more appealing for players that want to come to the Premier League. And I think now that we have got Champions League football again, it's possibly the right time. But obviously depends on outgoings, incomings, and obviously how much money we get for the summer transfer window.
Yeah.
But moving swiftly on. So we've obviously talked about the top of the league. Let's go back down to the bottom. Obviously, a club that we have already mentioned has caused a couple of upsets already this year, but unfortunately have failed to remain in the Premier League. I think it's after 11 seasons in the Premier League. Southampton have been confirmed as relegated from the Premier League this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know it can be difficult for teams once they do go down to come back up. Do we think that Southampton will be one of these clubs that bounce straight back, or do you think there's going to be some issues?
They certainly needed to go down. They brought a lot of young players in. Bazunu in goal, Lavia, Livramento. These are all players that are good quality. They're just very young and inexperienced. So I think going down to the Championship would be good for them. Can they keep the squad together? I think if they can keep those players as well as Ward-Prowse, which I think is going to be a hard task to do, then I think they will have no problem bouncing back. They need to get the right manager in. That they've struggled with that this season. Obviously, they got rid of Hassan Hootel, didn't they? Who was a bit hit and miss. They then brought in Nathan Jones from Luton, and that was disastrous. And they've not been able to get that appointment right. If they can find that right manager, do that, they'll keep the players together, or the bulk of that squad, then they will come up no problems. I think their trouble now will be, because some of those players are young and desirable, we'll be keeping hold of them.
I do worry for Southampton. I've got to be honest, because there are some good players in the team, but obviously now going down to the Championship, I would be interested to see how many of these players do actually stick around. Obviously, you're going to get your better players that want to obviously jump ship, stay in the Premier League, and I think it's going to be what was it that we said a couple of weeks, not a couple of weeks ago, it must have been a couple of months ago, where someone had bought someone for Jack Grealish, wasn't it?
I was about to say the same thing. Southampton got bought for the same price as Jack Grealish did, and I think that was the beginning of the end. I mean, cast your mind back probably 6-7 years ago now. We were having discussions of how many players can Southampton sell and still stay up, because that was their model, wasn't it? It's the same as sort of the Brighton model now. Buying young players that are good, develop them a little bit, sell them on. Van Dijk went, Mane went, Tadic, Fonte, the list goes on. Lallana, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Walcott. Do you know what I mean? The list went on, and there was a point where I certainly thought 5 or 6 years ago they're going to sell one too many players, and that's going to be it. It's all going to come tumbling down, and they've managed to sustain. They've not been great by any means, but yeah, I think that £100 million buyout, change of ownership, slight change of stuff, it's always hard in it for any club. Any sort of big change. You see it at Chelsea, they've struggled this year and they've thrown money at it. But I just think they sold one too many experienced players and bought in one too many inexperienced youngsters with potential. And it's a difficult game to play.
Yes, I mean, obviously we spoke a little bit about it last week, and I think it's still really interesting to see, because there's a few teams that are fighting down at the bottom, and not a lot of games left to go, with not a lot of points up for grabs, and possibly some difficult fixtures for the teams down at the bottom remaining for the rest of the season. Obviously, we've mentioned Leicester last week. I think it was one that we focused on mainly because of, obviously, they won the Premier League a few years ago, to really kind of struggling this year with, again, some of the talent that they've got. And obviously we mentioned last week about Kasper Schmeichel leaving the ranks, and seems to have gone drastically downhill since he's left the club. But obviously there are a couple of other teams. So we've got Leeds still in the mix, Everton still in the mix for going down. I mean, we made some predictions at the start of the season about who was going to finish where. Obviously, if you want to go back and check our predictions to see how we got on, you can find that video in our previous podcast videos. Look right back to the beginning of the season, you'll be able to find it. But obviously, we have spoken as the season has progressed who is likely to go down, and I think this is becoming ever increasingly hard to predict about who is going to go down. Obviously, we know Big Sam's just gone in at Leeds, and they took on Newcastle at the weekend with a 2-2 draw. And I think for many, there was a lot of people that thought with the run that Newcastle have been on this season, that was going to be a fairly easy pickings of a game. But we know, obviously, what Big Sam can bring to the table. Do you think, and this is a question that we asked ourselves a couple of weeks ago, but has your opinions changed at all? Do you think that Big Sam can make a difference for the rest of the season for them to stay up?
I think there's no, he will pull no punches with that squad. We said after the Man City game there'll be a change of lineup. There was a slight change of lineup. They should have won that game at Everton. I don't think you'll see Patrick Bamford back in the lineup again. He's a player, I think he's a very good championship striker. Could get you probably 10 goals a season in the Premier League, but he's devoid of all confidence. He passed a number of chances that he should have shot and could have scored. He missed a penalty, and then when he should have passed, he took a shot from the middle of nowhere. But I think you're going to get a hard to beat team. They've got us to play, and I think they will beat us. That's just the way of the world. That's on Sunday, and then they've got to play Tottenham. What are Tottenham playing for at that point? I think you're gonna have a very motivated Leeds to stay in the Premier League, and I think they will get. I think they'll get 4 points at least out their last two games, which still puts Nottingham Forest and Everton in danger. It just depends on what their results are. Nottingham Forest got you and Crystal Palace, and Everton have got Wolves and Bournemouth. So there is, each of those teams are still in sort of masters their own destiny. Even Leicester, they're winning at, well, I say winning, they should be winning at Liverpool, against Liverpool. They've had more shots on target. And when you look at the amount of goals that both Leeds and Leicester have scored this season, they're up there with the top half of the table. Leicester have only scored 2 goals less than Manchester United. Yet they're sitting second from bottom, waiting to be relegated. What's the Leeds goalkeeper? Meslier, the youngster. Had a really good couple of seasons, isn't he? And he's just, something's happened this year. It's not clicked. It's not happened. And he conceded, I think it was 15 in 4 games or something like that. And it's just unlucky for him. He's been dropped. Sometimes that's what you need, just a little break, a little change, and they'll come back better than ever. Can he save them? That's the question. I don't know. I would put more money on that they will win points this season, and they will have a better form in the last 4 games of the season than they had the rest of the season. But would 4 points be enough? Puts them on 35. I think a little bit. They have to do their job and hope that Wolves, West Ham, Tottenham, do them a favour. Do you know what I mean? I think they've got to hope that once they get their business done, that someone else slips up. A little bit like Arsenal in the title. It's you can only win and then hope for something to go wrong somewhere else. And that's not a good position to be in, is it? In relegation, really.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I still don't know. Leicester. I'm going to stand by my predictions. I think Leicester will be relegated from the league this year, and it may be what they need to kind of clear out possibly some of the dead wood. I know it wouldn't surprise me if we see them down and not bounce straight back up again, but come back up the season after, if that makes sense. So they get established in the Championship, and then they'll be amazing the year after. I think they'll come up as champions the following year. But we've mentioned this before about Everton, about how potentially they could struggle if they got relegated. Now, Everton, I suppose, is a team I've got a little bit of a soft spot for, because I do like the way they play some of the times. When they're on it, they are a fantastic team. And I tell you, when I started getting an appreciation for them was a couple of seasons ago. They had some unbelievable home games. Now, I know, obviously, I've got the shirt from when we took Phil up there a couple of years ago as his punishment, and it is a nice little ground, but you can understand why some teams don't like going there, because you can feel that it is really intimidating. And we know they've got their plans for their new stadium and all this sort of business, but I love the way that when they press the ball, when you look at the Man City game yesterday, they did so well in the first half. Obviously, right up until the point where they conceded, and it was and then the floodgates opened for Manchester City, obviously scoring 2 goals in quick succession. But for me, the frustrating thing about Everton, I think their time, or it's inevitable that they're going to be going down at some point. If they don't go down this year, then it's potentially going to be next year, because we've seen kind of like a bit of a gradual decline for Everton over the last few seasons. When you think about last year, when Frank Lampard was at Everton, kept him up, I think, on the second to last game of the season last year. With, I think they were losing at the point, and then scored two late goals to get them the win that they needed, and then obviously come to us and got absolutely battered. But for me, Everton is a team I would like to see stay in the league, and I'd like to see Sean Dyche get a proper crack at the whip with transfers, pre-seasons, and see how they do next year. But like I said, for the decline that they've been on, I think it is inevitable that they're going to go down at some point. If it's not this year, then it will be next year.
I think if they can stay up this year, and they give Dyche some backing, I think they're going to be about 10th, 11th next year. I think there are, if I'm honest with you, Tottenham have been rumoured again to be linked with Jordan Pickford. I'd sell him without a second thought. He's too little to be a goalkeeper, and he does have his moments where he's good because his intensity. But I think he's a little bit of a liability. I think you get rid of him, you get in a decent. They'll pay 30, 40 million for him without thinking about it. You get in a striker, because Calvert-Lewin, again, on his day, phenomenal. Can be one of the best in the league. But he's not fit enough to be a Premier League striker. So you need to find a decent striker. And you can see what he's trying to do. And that game against you, where they come in and beat you straight off the bat, that was sort of that bish bash bosh change of complete tactical style at Everton, and you could see that was the plan working perfectly. And if they managed to do that every game, they wouldn't be where they were or where they are now. I think they're struggling for goals. The stadium bit doesn't help, because obviously that's a transfer fund going out. But the support's always there through rain, shine, whether they're doing well or doing badly, they'll be all right. I think personally, if they go down, that's going to be it. I think they will tumble down the leagues, and that's not. I don't want that because as you said, I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Everton. They remind me a little. They're a northern West Ham, aren't they? They're that little underdog club fighting against some of the big boys. Should be up there, but I think if they go down, then the funding will dry up, players will leave, and then you're relying on youth academy. I don't know what their youth academy's like. I know they've produced some good players over the years: Ross Barkley, Anthony Gordon. Everton fans will probably go, "No, we bought them in when they were 15," but they've come through as youngsters into the first team. If they get relegated, I think the owner will go, "Nope, not spending no more money till we get back in the Premier League," and then they'll just tumble. And I think they'll be in League One before we know it, which is a shame to say because I think they're one of the only clubs, they're one of the founding clubs, aren't they, of the Football League, and are the only team not to be relegated. I don't know if that's still right.
And us.
Didn't you get relegated and not relegated on a technicality?
Since the top flight, because I think we got put down, or originally we were being put down into the bottom league, I think, because of the way that it was being designed at that particular point. But you're right. Since we've been in the top flight, we've never been relegated. Yeah.
It's a shame because you think it's a mainstay of football, Everton. When you go to Goodison, it's an old-fashioned ground. I think move to a new stadium, they will pack it out, no problem. But can they take that feeling with them? That's what some of the teams have struggled with. That's what we struggled with moving to the London Stadium from Upton Park. Upton Park had a character about it. In an empty stadium, it had a character. It wasn't just a football stadium; it had its own sort of feeling about it. Same with Goodison. You get that raw passion feeling when you're there, and transferring that. Some of that comes with history and time, but some of that comes with the old style architecture. Fulham's one of those grounds still that it's still a little bit old and decrepit, and you get that feel of this is just football. There's no business. It's just football.
Yep.
But yeah, I do think you're right. I think if they don't back Dyche, they'd be relegated.
Yes. Yeah. Are they? I think that counts for even if they do get relegated. Then if they don't get back to the summer transfer window in the Championship, then yeah, you're right. They could struggle. But speaking of struggles, each week we do a set of predictions. We for the coveted, lovely, beautiful FIFA Day trophy, predictions trophy, currently sitting behind Ian on that shelf. He's obviously the current holder, but I can tell you it's definitely coming home. There's still a couple of games obviously left to play, but we'll quickly recap on last week's predictions. We had 4 predictions last week. Obviously we had the Championship playoffs, as well as our respective fixtures. So the games that we had last week, we had Brentford versus West Ham, Arsenal versus Brighton, Sunderland versus Luton, and Coventry versus Middlesbrough. Just recapping, Ian, you had 1-1 for the West Ham versus Brentford versus West Ham game. I had 2-2. Both thought it was going to be a draw, but it was 2-0 to Brentford, so 0 points there. Arsenal versus Brighton, we both had a win for the Arsenal. Obviously, we got absolutely battered 3-0 on our own patch, so 0 points there. Sunderland versus Luton. This is one I'm actually interested to see what happens in the return fixture. Obviously, when they go back to Luton. So you had 1-1. And I had 2-1 to Sunderland. And it was obviously 2-1 to Sunderland. So 3 points for me for the correct score, 0 points to you. And just finally, Coventry versus Middlesbrough, you had 2-1 and I had... Sorry, You had 2-0 to 2-1 to Coventry. I had 2-0 to Middlesbrough, and the score was 0-0. So 0 points there. Now we have a couple of games to predict this week. Obviously, we mentioned we've got Nottingham Forest, and you have West Ham. No, you have Leeds at home. So your game is on the Sunday, and we're actually playing on the Saturday. So we are away. So we're away at Nottingham Forest, and I am going to be completely honest. I'm a little bit worried that this is going to be us for the season now. Obviously, Nottingham Forest have got a lot more to play for than what we have, and we are playing away. Martinelli has picked up a knock, which we don't know, obviously, the extent of the injury as yet, but apparently he did leave it in a boot yesterday. I'm hoping it's nothing to worry about, but we do have Trossard, which could cover his position, and he's been absolutely brilliant since he's coming for us. Again, like I said, I am a little bit worried that heads have completely dropped now because of we can't win the league. So I am going to go for a 2-2 in this one, I think.
Oh, you've taken the result out of my mouth. Nottingham Forest got a good draw at Chelsea. I think they need another couple of points, and I think you might go 2-1 up and then drop something late, and it will be 2-2.
So you're going for 2-2 as well, yeah?
No, do you know what? Just to be different, because I need the points. 1-1.
Okay. Your job be 3-3. So that leads us on to Sunday's game. So you are the early kickoff on the Sunday. How do you see this one go?
So we have the Conference League game again this Thursday, which is why we had a heavily rotated squad in against Brentford. I think we're going to have a similar sort of thing, because we're going to have to go out and win this game against Alkmaar, who have had the better results since we've played them. I know we are ahead, but all chips are sort of in that game. If we'd beat Brentford, we would have been mathematically safe. But I think we're at that point now that you've got to go hell for leather for that Europa Conference League game. The fact that means Moyes will probably stay if we win that, seemingly from the noises coming out of West Ham, has upset a few people. But I can't see anything other than Big Sam leading Leeds to a victory. And I'm going to go for 3-1 to Leeds.
Oh, Jesus. So yeah, I'm going to go for... Oh, where do I go on that one? Do you know what? I'm going to go for 2-1 to Leeds on this one, just purely on the basis, as you said, you've got your Europa League match again, so it could obviously play into their hands, and obviously you're travelling away as well. Now, I'm going to throw in, obviously we did the Championship playoffs last week. We have got them again this week, so Tuesday and Wednesday. Obviously the opposite fixtures. Do you want to include those again?
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
Okay, so obviously I had Sunderland down as a favourite to win that game last week. Again, another team I've got a little bit of a soft spot for through various situations, and I not so much want Luton to lose, but I think that Sunderland will get the better of Luton, even travelling away. So I am going to go. I think I'm going to go for exactly the same scoreline. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Sunderland again.
Well, I think it's a difficult game. I think Sunderland have the advantage, so have that ability to be able to sit back and just sort of play the game patiently, where Luton have got to get a result. And sometimes that can lead to you being a bit more open at the back, because if they don't win, then they're out. They've got to at least match that result, haven't they? So yeah, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in that one.
Okay, so that finally leads us on to Borough versus Coventry. What did I go for last time? I went for 2-0 to Middlesbrough. Do you know what? I'm going to change my mind on that one. I'm going to go to 2-1 to Coventry on this particular fixture.
It's at Middlesbrough this time round, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm going to go 1-0 Middlesbrough.
Okay.
I think that it was a close affair from what I understand, what I've read in the first game. I think the second game, that home advantage at the Riverside will potentially help them out to a victory.
Okay. Cool. So that's our predictions for this week. Obviously, we do make the predictions every week. So if you want to get involved, leave your comments down in the comment section below. We will read them and we will get back to you. Obviously, we do also have our social media accounts. They should be in the description. It's just get involved in the chatter. And Ian, have you got anything else you want to add in for this week?
Just something to think about, considering the noises that have been made, and maybe we can discuss it a bit more in depth next week. As I said earlier, the noises coming out of West Ham that are, if David Moyes wins the Conference League, there is no question about it, he will be staying on for the final year of his contract, which has caused some upset amongst West Ham fans, considering how bad we've been this season, and the fact that on a number of occasions the noises coming out of the club are he's got one game to save his West Ham career. So it's a double-edged sword, because we want to win the European trophy, even if it's a minor one. But at the bequest of keeping David Moyes, is it worth winning, or is it worth just going, you know what, fuck this, we're out? And I think if he's lost the dressing room in any way, shape, or form, which at points he looks like he has, then we will get absolutely tanked next week, because if he's lost the dressing room, those players won't want him there. And if the noise is coming out, or if we win this game, then he's staying. We're not winning. We see an on-field protest, didn't we, when they sold sort of Grady and Garner to West Brom a couple of years ago.
Yep.
But I think we could see another one now, which is not ideal. Ooh.
Let's hope not.
Maybe to discuss once we've played that game and have a bit more information about what's going on.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that's something obviously we can discuss next week. And if you want to get involved in that, obviously make sure you are tuned in to the podcast. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you know when the next videos or the subsequent videos that we put out go live. But anything else, Mr. Varka?
No, that's it. That's it for me this week.
In which case then, I've been Mike.
I've been Ian.
And we will see you next week.
Bye.